What's up, guys? Welcome to Behind the Research. This is a special episode of the Bigfoot Researchers Journal. It's just going to be me for this, and we're going to be, showing you a bunch of stuff. But I want to lay this out for you. I got a question, and I get this question from time to time. What's the freakiest thing that's ever happened to you as a researcher when you're, in the field looking for Bigfoot? And the answer to that is real simple. It's a situation that I don't think I've ever shared with anybody here on the site or anything like that, any of you guys personally. In 2012, we were on expedition in Myakka State Park, my son and I. And August 18, 2012 was the first day that we were there. We set up the tent. 2 hours later, my son had a sighting. We found a track. We tracked him, played cat and mouse for 45 minutes, and bam, this joker walked right out in front of my son. Well, we were going to go back in those areas at night. The first night, it rained that afternoon. It blew our campsite away, man. And we had like a bunch of crap, that was soaking wet. So we had to go find a laundromat in Myakka and all this stuff. And so anyway, we got back around 9, ate dinner, and then we went out about 10:30, quarter to 11. And we went back to the same spot with every intention of going exactly where he saw that Bigfoot. To put ourselves in the same spot, in the dark, with whatever it was that he saw, and we were freaking out. So we went to this trailhead, and it was about a foot deep. It had flooded. When I talk about a storm, epic proportions is what it was. And anyway, we started going in, and we got to the area where we were supposed to turn off trail to the right to go to where Christopher saw the Bigfoot, but there was a split. And I said, let's just go this way for a second. Well, there was a palm tree that was growing out, coconut palm that was growing out of the ground, and it went across, and then it went up. And what happens is the canopy is so thick in Myakka that the trees will literally grow and reach for the sunlight, a hole in the canopy. And that's what this was. It came out of the ground, and it was about 4 feet high, and it went horizontal, and then it curved and went up. It was like one of the weird palm trees you see on like those islands in the movies and stuff. And so I was going, and I was in the lead, and I had the spotlight. And we had headlamps on, and both our headlamps were on, and I didn't have the spotlight on at that time. I stepped over it, the horizontal part of the palm tree, and Christopher went around, and where the tree went vertical, he came under the side of it. And the tree kept going up. We got over that little section there, and we started walking, and we came about 30 feet, and it dried out on the trail, came up on a little rise that was about a foot higher than the rest of the trail. So we were standing on dry land, and as we hit dry land from out of that flooded little hole where that palm tree was, we heard a very disturbingly loud crack, and it came from up in the air behind us. And I whirled around, and Christopher whirled around at the same time, and we looked, both of us. You couldn't mistake what was happening or where it was coming from, because it was only approximately 30 feet from us. And we looked, and the entire top of that palm tree was moving, and an individual covered in hair with a gray face was falling from the tree, and his arms were outstretched like he was falling. And he went horizontal as he fell, and he landed on the ground so loud right in front of us. And at that point, I had the spotlight on. When I whirled around, boom, the spotlight went on. And we were freaking out, screaming. I'm talking about screaming. This thing's falling, and its arms were still outstretched as it was horizontal, and it hit the ground. Boom! Now, the individual was only about 4.5 feet tall, but the vibration from this individual falling from about 20 feet up out of that palm tree and smacking onto the side of that trail went through our boots. And we screamed because the individual got up and had this shocked look on its face. And then it turned, and it threw its arms up in the air, and it ran in this disturbing way, like it was kind of smacking its hands on the ground at the same time. And it had shorter legs than it had, the arms were longer, and it had a pointy head, and it was the most disturbing animal thing that I'd ever seen. I'd never seen anything like it, first of all. And so he was screaming, I was screaming, and then he turned around because he was literally jumping into my lap as all this was happening, and we were trying to get away from it because it looked like it was going to come at us for a second when it got up. And we were shitting, man. That's the bottom line. And when he whirled, my flashlight headlamp went in his eyes, and his headlamp went in my eyes, and we were both blinded, and he's going, don't look at me, don't look at me. And we're trying to, like, get back, and all this stuff's going on. And it ran on all fours, but its arms were coming up way over its head, man. And it ran, and I mean fast. It was whoo, and you could hear it into this saw palmetto head. It went about 30 feet, and then the sound abruptly stopped. And Christopher and I were like standing there, and we followed it with the light. And when it got deeper into the palmettos, all you could see was the tops of its arms, and then its arms stopped coming up, and the sound stopped. So we went over there, and it was minute rustling at all, like just little. It didn't even sound like a lizard kind of. And we tried to go in there, and we look around a little bit, and that was the last time we saw it. It was as if it had someplace to go already, and it went there. And you want to talk about freaked out? I think we saw a juvenile Sasquatch, and I've never really shared that with anybody, but that happened. And the other thing is this: that same night, because we were scared at that point, I was like, "My God, man! You saw this giant thing. Now we got this thing going on." And we were hearing stuff everywhere, and it was like freaking us out. We already found tracks, so we were like, I was thinking, there's a good chance, man, we're not going to come out of these bushes later. You know what I mean? So what do we do? So he was like, let's go, let's keep going. So we went back towards the tree, and we went over it, and this time I went around it, from the side, and went over the horizontal spot again. And Christopher went under it again, and then we just went down the trail straight ahead, trying to like kind of stay out of trouble at this point, because it just seemed to us that like what's going to happen next was the way we were looking at it, and it felt so surreal what we just witnessed. We couldn't even like process it, but we got like down. I mean, we were commenting the whole time, like the banter going back and forth was just like, this is the freakiest thing that's ever happened, ever. And we get down the trail, and we come around this little bend, and Christopher's about 4 feet behind me, and I shine the spotlight, because now I wasn't going to turn it off. Like, at this point, these things are like here, something's going on. And my spotlight hit directly on about 160 to 170 pound Florida panther. And it was on its haunches, like this, and its ears were back, and I could hear it making this noise, and I was like, oh shit. So I said, back up, just slowly back up, don't turn around. And we kept taking steps back, and it just watched us. It just turned its head, and it was actually, I think, looking at Christopher, because Christopher was a lot smaller than me at that time, and it just watched us. And then the bush blocked my field of view. We kept backing up about another 50 feet, and then I said, run. We turned around and we ran back to the car. So that was our first night expedition in Myakka State Park, and I never shared that, I don't think, with anybody. So anyway, welcome to the Bigfoot Researchers Journal. We got a hell of a show for you.
The vast swamps and wilderness areas of the state of Florida are home to a legend. Join Team Crypto Reality as they go after the truth.
Go!
For the first time in Bigfoot research history, you're going to see what it takes to be a real Bigfoot researcher. Real story from behind the scenes. Turns out, finding Bigfoot was the easy part. The Bigfoot Researchers Journal. Seeing is believing.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Behind the Research. It's been raining since late Thursday night, early Friday morning. It's now Tuesday, man, and it hasn't let up. Maybe an hour or two here and there, but it's like cats and dogs right now, and it may actually be starting to let up again, but it's just been insane with weather. So we've had to cancel 3 different expeditions, and just in the last 5 days, and so we're going to do some behind the research stuff, which is still going to be real interesting because basically, we're gonna talk about what went on in the beginning and bring you right up to speed with what it's like to actually do what we do, and I'm going to be answering a ton of questions that I got asked over the course of the last 2.5 years, and it's going to be an interesting show. So this is Behind the Research. Okay, so here we are, and first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting and contributing by being members here at CryptoReality.us. Every one of you guys has contributed to what we do. It directly influences your monthly membership, directly influences every aspect of what we do, and affords me, in particular, the opportunity to advance our mission and get closer and closer every month, and it's the most important aspect of what we do. We can't do this without funding. This is just what it is. You know what I mean? There's a reason why there's as many films showing Bigfoot on our site as there are. You know what I mean? You can't go anywhere else to see something like this, and that's because of you. So don't ever forget that. To my core, I appreciate what you do as a member by contributing and staying members. And a lot of you people have gone above and beyond. And I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who you are. And we're still alive and kicking because all of you guys are contributing every month. And that little $9.99, it adds up, man. And so I'm grateful to all of you. Now, in moving on, we've had a shit ton of rain here over the last 5 days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Today's Tuesday. Really, it started raining Thursday night, early Friday morning. So we had to cancel expeditions because we're talking about real rain, not like sprinkles. So, the thunder and the lightning and all that stuff gets dangerous. But the inundation, man, technical, equipment, cameras, and all that kind of stuff doesn't mix well. So when the rain stops, we'll be back out in the field. I know that the Bigfoot in our areas are probably going to be jumped up and running around, and it's going to be great because we've been in a drought down here for a while. So this rain, it was much needed. I think we've got between 8 and 10 inches, something like that, or by the end it's going to be about that. So field expeditions, absolutely, as soon as it stops raining. So, but for now, I want to answer some questions that I get, and I want to help you guys to understand a lot of stuff that I wasn't afforded the opportunity because to understand, because nobody actually saw what I saw before, or if they did, I never knew about it. And I was exposed to some very unique learning opportunities. So I'm going to expound on that now to answer some questions. The first question that I want to answer is a general type question. I get this all the time. And really, it also has to do with a lot of statements that are made about the feet of Bigfoot, right? The Sasquatch in our study groups between the research areas 1 and 4 and 4A, appear to show and display in the tracks every single variation that modern humans have in the shapes of their feet. Some of them have a very flat track, and some of them don't. And so I want to go over that now. And this is an interesting track. It's, I believe, from a female. And you can see it's got a very drastic, that last toe right here, very drastic curve to the foot. And also, it's got curvature around the heels. But that doesn't mean that the foot's deformed. Now, when we found this track, it looked like this individual had a deformed foot. And when we found this track in particular, it was in deep mud. You can see that track's pretty thick. And you can also see that it's kind of rather strange. You can see how the foot itself conformed to the actual substrate. It's bent. You can see where that's the gripping mechanism. Now, that could be a mid-tarsal break, or it could display some kind of an arch. There is definitely a pronounced ball to the foot, the pad right here. I'm sorry, the pad of the foot. But then you can also see where the toes have gripped down. That's what you're seeing in that track. That if we put that heel like this, then that foot was actually probably leaning forward a little bit. In the front end of it, where this big toe is on this side right here, you can see the big toe there, was trying to grip in that mud and propel itself forward. Now, the interesting thing to note is that as we track this female, and there were 250 to 300 from this female, the actual shape of the track and the dynamics that we witnessed in flexion changed with the substrate. Another perfect example of that would be this track here, and this is one of the males. This is one of the males, and I think this is the one this one was broken, so I have to kind of hold it for you guys. But this is one of the males tracks, and let me see if I can put that together a little bit better. There we go. That's one of the males tracks right there, and you can actually see with this males track, it was the same thing. And actually, if we hold it level, you can see where there's definitely curvature in the center of that track. And the toes are gripping a little bit less. Now, this is in a little bit harder or firmer substrate, but you can see toe slides, so we know there was still some mud representative there. This track, actually, you can see toenails in it. Here, I'll hold the front of it up, and you can actually see toenails in this track. Right here, there's a toenail sticking out. It's like kind of sharp on this one. And then on this one, you can actually see toenail right there too. Let me see if I can reduce some of this brightness so you guys, there you go. Now you can see this pad or this this ball right here is very pronounced, man. Very pronounced. You know, and looking at this right here and how it relates to the rest of the foot, when I put this back together, you can see that individual has a very bony looking foot. Now, it's not huge, but it is exactly the same shape as that 18-inch track. It's got a very triangular look to it. It's very wide at the front. Now, we look at this track, and this is in one type of substrate, right? And people say, oh, well, that could be a human track. And of course, that's the way it looks. But this track is from the same exact trackway, and that one appears to be a lot flatter. You know what I mean? And it actually displays right through this region what could be a mid-tarsal break. If you look at it from this angle, you can see how much flatter that track is. And people would say, you know, if I held this up, they'd be like, well, that looks like a Bigfoot track. But these guys are walking through different substrates, and we're getting different reactions from it. Now, you can see the toes there in this guy right here. Let me see if I can get a little bit better. Whoops, wrong way. Let's try that. A little bit better representation so you can get some shadows. And you can see, man, with the variations in substrate, this area here, this of the pad where he plants, is not as exaggerated as this one. And this is the same foot, man. This is the exact same foot. Exact same foot, man. So when you look at it, the mud tends to exaggerate a track, and make things more pronounced, and a harder substrate will make things less exaggerated and appear more flat. So it depends on where you find these tracks. Now, I look at this aspect of the Sasquatch species, and to me, this is one of the most interesting little problems that we have. There have been studies done, but the individuals that have conducted these studies have gone off of track casts because we obviously can't examine the foot, right? So where were the tracks found? How firm was the substrate that those tracks were found in? Well, they say, it was in powder, that there was approximately a ½ inch of powder over firm ground. And that could be. But the firmer the ground, the flatter the impression appears to be. Why is that? Because it doesn't penetrate and give as natural a representation to the foot. Because the foot is squashing on it. The muscles are flattening when it hits a harder substrate. So it's got to be something that's density in the middle somewhere. Not mud, because then that has a tendency to collapse in on itself and give you a representation of a real skinny, goofy looking track. And it can appear deformed. And so, when I look at all this stuff, my answer where I get questions about, or statements that, well, Bigfoot have flat feet, so those aren't Bigfoot tracks. And I actually had an idiot researcher from here in Florida try to tear apart our work and on tracks. And I look at that and I kind of chuckle because, these people actually think that they have a solid, determination on exactly what it is. And that's not the case, man. Nobody has a solid determination on what it is. And the fact remains, the truth of tracks is just this. When you find tracks, they will look different over the course of many different substrates. So, I take that as, the answer that I follow. And the other thing is this, and I want to stress this. If you're a researcher and you doubt whether or not it's a Sasquatch that's leaving tracks in the middle of the wilderness barefoot, you're selling yourself short. The species exists, and I honestly believe that with all of this skepticism that we endure as eyewitnesses over the subject, it has had an effect on us as researchers, as people who are interested in the subject. And to allow that to create subjectivity or subjective opinions, well, it could be a human because it's not outside the human range of footprints, a modern human, and then not follow up on it and continue to track this individual, this stuff happens. And I can tell you right now, I'm not finding modern human tracks in these haphazard locations that I go to on days when nobody knows I'm going there. And this is not a bunch of people out there planting 18-inch tracks. This is not people planting 10-inch tracks. This is not people planting 3-inch infant tracks. This is wild men. This is the species. This is the Bigfoot species. This is the Sasquatch species. This is, colloquialisms, man. This is skunk ape. This is those things. Of course, those are, misnomers. I mean, the bottom line is the species is a type of hominoid that has human characteristics. And if you doubt that, just know you're staring at human characteristics right now. All right? Now let's go back. Yet, if you look at these two, you see these variations. And that's because the substrate varies. So anyway, and I'm sure it's just like everybody else. I found a track one time, man, in the center toe or the second toe was longer than the big toe, which was down here. So we got one of these feet, and I looked it up, and it's a human, like it's common in humans and women especially. You get that longer second toe, man. And I don't know, they had some like weird nickname for it, but the bottom line is like, in looking at all this stuff and all of it where it has to do with tracks, I say the same thing over and over and over again. If you're unsure, follow it. Follow it up in the direction. If something starts yelling at you or runs off in the bushes or knocks down a tree or you catch one on film. So enough said about that. Let's move on to the next question. Now, let's address another very common misunderstanding about differences in what we see in Bigfoot tracks and what's being said about Bigfoot tracks. Let's talk about toe splay. Toe splay is a direct result of the foot reacting to substrates. What does that mean? That means the individual is trying to grip, man. And in mountainous areas, you're going to see a lot more toe splay, or hilly areas, or a small bank or something. You're going to see some toe splay from time to time. Now, I've heard it said that if the toes are bunched together, that person's had shoes on, that's a modern human. That's bullshit. Subconsciously, you don't even know you're doing it. Go walk through a wilderness area in your bare feet, first of all, and see if you can get away with it without like damaging your foot and being injured, getting cut up and all that. Second of all, if it's a hilly area, start to realize that you don't even know you're doing it. Your toes are gripping differently, and when you're going up a hill on an angle, your feet will splay. Your feet will splay open, man. Your toes will splay open. So, you look at this, and again, we see how instinctively your muscles are reacting to things, and you don't even realize what's going on. It's the exact same thing, man. So, where you're gonna get mud, it absolutely does not promote a firm grip for me to splay my toes to try to go through mud and dig, because the amount of surface that's actually gripping is reduced when the toes are not together. I have one big flat surface and I'm gripping, and that's what we see in those tracks and all the tracks we find in mud. And, we research in flat areas, dude. Florida doesn't have mountains. Florida doesn't have really a bunch of big hills or anything like that. And, you start looking at tracks and you see toe splay. Well, where are they? Most of this stuff is in hill country, folks. That's the bottom line. But you get these opinions from researchers who say, and I've been contacted, and people are putting me down, dude, over this stuff. And like I said before, like they got one on a slab and they're checking out his feet, and his toes are just splayed out. You know what I mean? It's like, these people don't know. You know what I mean? And for someone to go out of their way and contact us and say, those tracks clearly, those look like feet that have had shoes on them its entire life, is bullshit. And to me, it's ignorant. You know what I mean? I just say, well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. There's nothing else I can do about it. Instead of asking questions and allowing me to answer, we get the one-off statement, I know everything, and that's not a Sasquatch track, and you're a hoaxer. And it's like, dude, okay. So what happens to that individual? He no longer has any kind of opportunity to learn from us if I have anything to say about it. So, I look at these situations and, people have a tendency to dismiss the most common sense examples of why tracks look different with skeptical rhetoric. All Bigfoot feet are flat. Bigfoot have flat feet. Really? Okay. And how do you know this? Because somebody studied some casts that were given to them? They didn't even find them themselves? You know what I mean? Like, they didn't track the individual through varying substrates. They can't give you an accurate representation of what substrate that track was in. I don't trust that person's opinion, man. So I look at what's going on here and showing film of the trackways, showing film of where we found the tracks, each individual's tracks, in the variations in the substrates. That's what we've done. And I'm giving you examples of the conclusions that we have based on what we actually have shown you. And that's what it is. I have found tracks here in Florida that have toe splay. And generally, they're when the Sasquatch changes direction. And you'll see a little splay. And it's a perfect representation of what I just said. The foot naturally, and the toes naturally do what they need to do. Just like your hand. When you grab something, you don't grab something and put your hand flat, and because that's the way your hand is. This is the way your hand is. It's just open all the time. That's what these people are saying. Sasquatch have wide, splay because they don't wear shoes. That's not necessarily true, bro. You know what I mean? So, so I hope I answered some of your questions about that. As we get more information, you'll get more information. On to the next question. So the next question is about behavior, and it's an important question, and it's very difficult to get answers to this particular question. It's about the behavior of the Sasquatch as a family unit. Who does what? What's going on? what are the juveniles doing, And we'll start with the females. The females appear to be taking care of the infants, and we've documented this. And I don't think that that's a stretch. Most human primates, the females are taking care of the infants. It appears to be the exact same family dynamic. The situation is that we catch females, or what we believe to be females, because there are infants with them. It's just happened on many occasions. I think even in the last film, there was an infant within 3 or 4 feet of a female, or what could have been a female. But over and over and over again, I actually, in one film, caught a breast on film. And it was a good-looking breast from a man's standpoint. Except it was gray, and then it was surrounded by hair. So that aspect of it was a little bit of a turnoff. But the bottom line is, there was a breast on film, a female breast with a perfect nipple right in the middle. And I know that in that same clip, there was a juvenile with that individual. Now, it wasn't the best footage, but from a research standpoint, it led me to catch more on film in that exact same spot. So I know that in that clip, there's a real good chance that since there was a boob and an infant, that it was probably the same Sasquatch that in subsequent incursions into that particular spot, we caught on film. So when we call Betty. And she just has softer features, you know what I mean? You can tell by looking at them, that's a male. They just look generally more pissed off. Their features are more exaggerated. And we tend to see this in the ape or hominid species, you know what I mean? The females, while a little bit smaller, I'm sure, can get very big. I mean, small for a Sasquatch is still extremely, powerful and large. So as far as the females go, we catch them a lot of times sitting. I have the one where it's turned to the side, and I'm like 3 feet away, and this joker's got its hand. You can see the fingers, and then the next frame, the hand's gone, and the eyeball's staring at Melanie. So then, that pretty much covers the females thing. And in each one of these, while it's very difficult to catch the infants on film, we have, they're typically around the females. And then we'll move on to the juveniles. And the juveniles are juvenile, and that's what it is. They seem to have very similar characteristics to modern human juveniles in that they're trying to get in trouble. That's the bottom line. We've had them take our tea, Tupperware jug. I leave it on the trail because it's making too much noise with the ice in it, banging around on the Tupperware on the side of the container. And we set it down on the trail thinking that we'll get it on the way out because we didn't want to alert them as drastically to our presence. And, the shit comes up missing. We come in on the way out, and my tea's gone, man. A couple months later, the tea's sitting back on the trail in the exact spot I left it. 10 expeditions gone by. No tea jug, nowhere. All of a sudden, it reappears, and we catch this little guy. Now, this little guy is less than 10 feet from me, and it's where we found the tea. The tea hadn't been drank or anything. There was mold all over it, and it looked like he just took it to mess with us. Hey man, it's juvenile. That's just what it is. So when it comes to the juveniles in our research areas, we've noticed a pattern, and that pattern is that they behave like young, teenage humans. They do not mind risking exposing themselves to you, and they don't mind hanging out just long enough to where they can get a peek at you before they take off into the bush. In fact, this shot here comes from the recent Manatee Springs expedition that we had, and this particular guy was hanging out there for a few minutes in plain view. I personally chased these juveniles. Like, I don't know how many different ones, but I have chased these little guys, trying to catch them on film on many occasions. And here's a piece of footage that I'm going to show you guys where I'm actually giving chase and I got Melanie paralleling my position from a road. Now this particular instance that we're going to show you is in research area 4, and it's the main den that's right on the side of the road. And this was like one of those instances where I walked in I sent Melanie in first down the road and drew his attention, and I came in from inside the canopy behind his position while he was messing with Melanie. And this dude took off, man, and I gave chase. And let me assure you, man, when something on 2 legs takes off running through the bushes in front of you, and you see the bushes being spread apart, but you can't see what it is, but you can hear the kind of thing, it's freaky. I got real close to this individual. I was probably within 20 feet of him when he took off, and we caught him on film. Here, let's check it out. We caught actually a couple of them. So I think there was a group of juveniles here, and they were toying with Melanie, and I backdoored them. Pretty cool situation here.
Yeah, straight ahead. Straight ahead in front of you. Towards this side. Towards me. Not as big as you. Just maybe because it's more careful. I'm not sure where it is right now. He was ahead of you. He might be right here. I just heard something again over here, towards me.
Now, at this point in my research, I knew enough to know that if they sound like they stopped, it's because they did. And they'll dig in and burrow down underneath a bunch of bush.
Where are you? Right here. Okay.
Based on what Melanie said, the noise stopped right around where I was stopped. So she backtracks to where she originally said the sound was, and sure enough, I knew he was right there. He was within probably 10 feet of me in some thick bush to my left. Right there, Melanie pans back, and we get him. Now watch this. He turns, because I'm moving back there, trying to find him. But the bush is so thick. So you can see there's something there. Well, now he turns his head, and we get a good look at an angled profile from Melanie's vantage point. You can see both of his eyes, and towards the right-hand top corner of that circle, you can even see tufts of his hair on top of his head. His brow ridge is visible, and just under that you see both eyes. Now this is the frame before it, so we can see as I move, he clearly turns his head. He's getting ready to take off again, and in fact, he does. There's another look at that first frame, and then the second frame, and you can see his head there, man. Now again, this is early on when I was chasing after him. I was running in there after these little guys. They were toying with us, paralleling our position wherever we went in that research area. I got frustrated one day, and I decided to go after them. I got real lucky, is the bottom line. Because if one of those big males would have got pissed about that, you might not have seen me ever again. Now here's another one, and there's possibly 2 in that shot, but they're peeking at Mel. We could go on with juveniles endlessly because these guys have a tendency to toy with you. I would venture a guess to say that the bulk of our real-time circumstances where something's around us and it's moving, it's obvious on two legs, are juvenile Sasquatch. They're very curious and they will get close to you. They will let you hear them and they will let you see them. In fact, one of my most incredible sightings was of a juvenile that was 10 feet from me. He peeked up, stared right in my eyes, and then floated off casually down the hill. At which point we found the peanut butter jar with the finger swipes in it. And I believe we have his DNA. We'll see you next week on the Bigfoot Researchers Journal when we cover the behaviors of the big males. Have a good week, guys.